All right, let me share out my screen and we will get right on into it. Just a quick agenda. All right, Jim, we'll start off with some wins of the week. I got look at this. How do you like that?
Yes, I
That
like
Adobe
it.
stock. Uh,
Hmm.
Wins of the week. And then we're gonna get into the SaaS report. Did you have a good turnout, Jim, on your webinar?
We did. We had a nice turnout for the webinar, and
Awesome.
we'll have some highlights for the folks here momentarily.
Awesome. And then we'll go through Michelle's got a few things, and then Chip and I'll go through an interesting topic that he's getting questions on. So we will air on over to Jim. Jim, I'll stop sharing because we don't need my sharing for win of the week, and I know you're going to share some stuff on the SASE report. So who's got a good win out there? I can't. Like this baffles me. With all the
I know.
M365 events that happen on a gosh, how many a day do you guys see about?
Jeff,
100 million.
So
I
some,
I
yeah.
have one, but I don't want
I
to trigger
want to, yeah.
other people.
Here's the thing.
I-
We spend a lot of time talking to prospects,
right.
right, who are coming out of a trial and then deciding to sign up. So I have examples of people that are not yet partners that are in trial that have basically found things immediately, within the trial that I can share. But I really would love folks sharing, existing partners sharing their stories.
I agree. Let's see if anybody's got
I got
anything.
one.
All right, let's hear it.
Awesome.
Well, it's an easy one. This morning, it's stopped a man well, it didn't stop. It detected a man in the middle attack. You know, the classic old. The guy clicked on, put his credentials in on his phone, and it came back and said incorrect credentials, and then redirected him to Microsoft. And then the second time it was correct, but they already grabbed his credentials. And then I went in and I saw in the method there was a new guy, a new email, a Gmail account added as a method for multi-factor authentication. And this was all sourced from a group in Nigeria. So what I did is I took the email address and registered it for as many spam engines as possible. So I added to the Republican and the Democrat mailing lists. So we're going to fill up their mailboxes with spam and crap.
Oh, that's
Bravo.
great.
Bravo. You deserve a
Anyway.
reaction. Hey, there you go. Clapping
That is,
emoji for Andy.
Thanks.
that is awesome.
Yeah.
That's a best practice right there, Jim.
Yeah, no, that should be. We need to put that in a KB article, Chip.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Link out to this site,
Yeah.
this site.
is
Add.
Oh yeah, Mike's got a great suggestion. Can we make that a respawn rule?
yeah. I was just gonna say I was looking for Andy Rowe in the call. I figured he'd say, "Can't you guys automate that for us?" So I've got one to share. It's actually I'll call it a win in the week for our support team. We had a partner reach out to us and ask us to verify an account takeover, and it had a pretty unique signature. So they asked us to help them look for the data around it, and we found it. And our support team took the initiative to actually search for this across every single event that occurred over a 3-day period on either side of it. Found one other partner who had the exact same signature, reached out to them proactively and said, "Hey, somebody else alerted us to this, and looks like one of your customers had the same thing. You might want to look into it." And sure enough, they reached out to their customer, and that customer had been compromised. So they were quickly able to shut it down. And just want to give kudos to the support team. I don't know how often you guys on this call interact with them, but they really acted proactively. And we don't always have time to go searching and acting as a as a SOC. But in this particular case, it was so unique that we felt like we wanted to see if it happened anywhere. And we picked it up in one other partner. So it's pretty interesting.
Hmm. That's really cool.
Great.
Any others? Now that, you know, we've got some people that have, you know, stepped up here, are you holding back?
Got some mojo. I'll share one real quick, Andrew. So the team talked to a prospect yesterday on trial with us in the course of a week, caught 3 token hijackings. And this partner, or the prospect, was originally talking about coming in for the 500 user minimum. And they said, after what we've seen, we're putting all 4,000 users on this.
Wow.
Yeah. They're like, we can't afford not to cover everybody at this point with how pervasive these attacks are happening.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
You
a
guys-
win-win, Jim.
What's that?
That's a win-win, Jim.
It really is.
You know, here's what you should have an opt-in, Jim, for anybody using SaaS alerts, that they can opt in for an offensive attack by SaaS alerts. And if you get past them, they have to deploy to everybody.
Interesting idea. We might put Ben Jones on that one.
Yeah. Or, you know, we could have Black Hills do it.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
so it's
Yeah. Mr. Jones is, I think he likes now the black hat stuff, and yeah, doing the all of the attacks, finding vulnerabilities.
All right, Jim, how about let's hit the SASE report. What do you say?
Sounds good. So I'll share my screen. Here we go. Okay, so yesterday we sent out the newsletter, and it's nice to see that a lot of people actually read our newsletter, because as soon as the newsletter went out, we got a rash of people downloading the report, right? So that's the good news. A lot of people are reading it. If you didn't see the newsletter yet, the link is there. You can go download it, right? I'm just going to cover the absolute highlights here, Andrew. Chip and I did a webinar on this, I think it was Tuesday, and kind of went over in detail, but I'm just going to give us the highlights.
Jim, for
Yes.
those that want all the detail, is there a YouTube on it, Michelle, yet, or something, or will there be?
The recording of the webinar is available. Yes, I sent that out. I'll send you the link. I'll put it in the chat.
Perfect. Okay,
Great.
go ahead, Jim.
So for those that are new to SaaS alerts, we have been doing this SaaS report. SASI stands for SaaS Application Security Insights. We've been doing it since the first year that we were around. The whole idea is that we aggregate information from the platform, and then we anonymize it, and we're able to publish the trends from the aggregated data that we find. So the stop dead date was December 31st, 2023. So we took all the data from 2023 that consists of 907 MSPs, just under 2 million end user accounts, almost 19,000 SMBs total, which is cool when you think about the fact that we're, now collectively between our MSP community and SaaS search, we're servicing almost 19,000 small businesses worldwide. About 2.7 billion logged events in 2023. And then what about the tenants? What are the size of the tenants? Believe it or not, it goes all the way down from 1 and goes as high as 153,000. With the average being what you would suspect, somewhere in the 50 range, because that tends to be the average size of a MSP customer, right? So those, just so you understand that the data collection parameters, that's what they are. So we look at unattempted logins, where are the countries that are trying to get into your customers the most? Here they are: China, India, South Korea, Brazil, Russia.
Jim,
what about the one? Yeah, go ahead.
Since, and this is a question to Chip. Chip, since the Microsoft incident, I know you had an end date, But if you were to pick up and just did a SaaS report for the last 2 months, would Russia have probably jumped up? Or I don't want to lead the witness, but since this is just more a gut feel, just based on what's been happening.
Yeah, they would have. Russia jumped in just that small data set from their typical 4 or 5% up to almost 10.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting.
So double
But
the activity.
let me add more context to that. But China also jumped from 34 to 44.
Right.
Is there any, and by the way, Chip, is there any chance, again, just gut feel, where Russia was using their IP space to in this most recent APT 29, attack or ongoing saga?
My gut feel is that they're mostly hiding their geolocation in other countries. And my gut feel is that since they know there's so much hacking activity coming out of China, why not just hide it in everything that's coming out of China?
Right.
That's what I do.
Right.
They also have a fairly strong, I shouldn't say it's strong, but somewhat of a cohesive, somewhat of a symbiotic relationship with them.
They're certainly fast friends at the moment.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And look, we can go all the way back to the onset of the Ukraine war. And we could show you, I think we went over this back then, but we had evidence of potential collusion between China and Russia at the time. In terms of coordinated, we saw data that where there was coordinated attacks coming from both countries at the same time. So, obviously there's a lot of data out there. We're seeing a small sample of it, but it was pretty enlightening to see some of that. So again, unattempted logins. Here they are. The successful unauthorized logins. So India actually gets in the most, followed by Singapore, Philippines, Germany, and Spain. And again, back to Chip's point, you really never know who's doing what from where these days, because they're hiding traffic in different places of the world. So obviously we track all the low severity events along with medium and high. You can see here, the file event opened is, one of the lowest, or one of the, low severity events that we track the most. OAuth, access foreign application. So this allows us really to be able to give you guys the shadow IT reports that we do at this point. File event modified. So low severity, a lot of people don't care about them, but it does provide us with data that is aggregated to look at potential other things that might be coming down the pipe in the way of attacks. Medium level severity, so limit exceeded by file, file upload limit exceeded, and account locks. And then what most people care about is the critical. So you've got outside approved locations, number one by far, and then file event opens from an outside approved location, and then the download from outside approved location. So let's talk about the applications that are causing the most noise. Obviously Microsoft gets by far the most activity, but we want to look at the ratios here, and essentially, they account for 1.3% in terms of the activity on the critical event side. Right. So out of all of those events produced by Microsoft, 1.3% is what we would consider to be critical. And then Google Workspace right behind it. It's kind of amazing how noisy Slack is in terms of the critical alerts. And Chip has some theories on that. Chip, you want to share your theory on Slack?
Yeah, similar to Teams, which the Teams data is sort of buried inside of the Microsoft data, because we look at all those products together, but Slack obviously stands alone. And there's just a lot of file sharing and invites to people to join the organization for commenting on things that are coming from a lot of different regions that aren't necessarily whitelisted. So I think that's what drives the Slack number so high.
Right. So now let's look at time to detect and contain a breach. So the 228 days, that's an IBM research number in terms of time to detect the average cybersecurity breach. So what we were able to do, which I'm really proud of, is the fact that in 2023 we were able to automatically stop about 7,900 IOCs within 5 to 15 minutes on behalf of our partners. So this was a first year we were able to track this number because it was the first full year that we had to respond in the platform. So this was awesome to be able to show this year. Similar, right? This year we launched Fortify. So we were able to look at the Microsoft security scores as well. So the highest score to date, 96. More than 100 scores increased by 50%, which is also really awesome. And the top 10 MSP users have increased the secure score of 233 customers by an average of almost 36%. So, when you think about what you're able to do with Fortify and really helping your customers develop a better security posture around 365 immediately, this one becomes a game changer. And by the way, if people have questions on any of this stuff, please chime in. And then, the threat vectors, MFA, this one, I did a lot of media interviews when we released the SaaS report a couple weeks ago. And one of the things people asked me was, what's the biggest surprise from the report? And I said, I don't know about surprise, but I can tell you one of the biggest disappointments is that this number still isn't higher. Last year it was 32% MFA, on customers, and last year, it's 32%. So just a 3% increase. That's kind of disappointing. So unmonitored guest user accounts. Here we are. So we've got a total of almost 2 million total accounts monitored, and essentially it's split kind of down the middle for the most part in terms of guest user accounts versus licensed user accounts. So we're doing a better job, I think, as a community there, because we read a report and about 70% of folks are now blocking sign-in on these accounts, which is really good news. We just have a little bit more work to do, making sure that those are open. So SaaS to SAP integrations. Chip thinks this is a fun slide. So
It was fun for me.
Yeah, I was in the webinar the other day. I was highlighting the fact that Chip and I have different definitions of fun, but you can see, the various third-party applications that people with Microsoft 365 essentially are leveraging. So obviously, this tells us we got a lot of Mac users, right? And then over on the Google Workspace side, a lot of those are essentially education applications. So Google's doing a really good job in I think the higher ed or K through 12 and in the higher ed space. File sharing. So nearly 70 million total files shared. That's over 8,000 per hour. And you can see the breakdown here in terms of external and internal. We always talk about, orphan links, so make sure that people are actually sending them to specific, when they're sharing a link, it goes to a specific individual and it has a timestamp. Avoid anonymous file sharing with no end date. This highlights the reason for that. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share here, Andrew, on the report. You can essentially download the report. Michelle and Amy have also created basically a one-pager. We've had a lot of folks ask, hey, this information is really good. Can you give us a one-pager that is essentially non-branded? So you can share it with your customers. And the marketing team's actually done that. So that is available now as well. One other thing, Andrew, that I wanted to share with a couple minutes here, because I did this in a webinar recently, and it got a pretty good reaction. I just want to make sure that this audience knows it. We went over this a lot when Microsoft came out with NCE, New Commerce Experience. We're talking about SaaSonomics and right sizing protection and right sizing costs for customers. And I just want to remind everybody that a business premium license right now is $22 from Microsoft. You add SaaS search for $3, the total package is $25, right? An E3 license from Microsoft is $36, $11 more. But when you look at essentially the differences, these are the only differences between those two license types. And we essentially give you a lot of the security that is required in SaaS alerts, but we're doing it from a third-party perspective, which is one of the things I always tell people is like, why would you have Microsoft police Microsoft? So I think a lot of the things in the E3, for the most part, the average customer doesn't need. So you could save them a lot of money if anyone is basically on E3 and really push the business premium with the SaaS search bundle, and I think provide a better level of security for less money. So that's pretty much wraps it up for me, Andrew.
Good stuff, Jim. Microsoft, and policing Microsoft and Microsoft security these days, after missing MFA on their legacy email account, it's probably a tough transition, Jim.
Probably a good idea. I don't know. Call me crazy, but it's probably a good idea to be policing Microsoft from a third party at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody have questions on what Jim shared?
Yeah, I've got a question about the price point, the $3 price point. Because we implemented it last fall, and I'm going to actually I'm going to kind of force my clients to have it for 365. Anything we do, I'm going to do that in a one-on-one way with each client. Is $3 a good price point y'all found in the market?
It's the average right now that we're finding. We've got partners that are out, some that are out at $8 per user per month. That's certainly on the higher end, but the average is $3. And you're not going to get, at $3, you get very little pushback. Brian, I would recommend, so by going one by one, you're doing it the hard way, which certainly is your right if you want to do that. The easy way is to work with your account manager from SaaS Alerts to get the coverage extension notification that we've created and send a communication out to your customers that this is what we're doing and why we're doing it and all the good reasons, all the good reasons why we should be doing it for you. And here is all in the Microsoft Security Plus plan, all of the different new functionality and features that you're getting. with the opt-out. We know at $3, I can't speak to higher price points, but I know at $3, when you send that out, your opt-out rate will be less than 5%.
Okay, cool.
And Jim,
So,
can I do a quick segue on one thing? I was going to share this after Michelle, but I think it's relevant here in what you're just sharing right now with Brian. And that is this right here. So what comes to mind, and again, I am not an attorney, but what comes to mind, Jim, when, I think it's imperative that you do what Jim recommends and say that we're implementing this across our customer base. You have the right to opt out. The thing that I would say is make sure your statements of work are updated to reflect that, because this is where an MSP can get themselves into trouble. Doing something that is not in their legal documents. And the good example of this, Brian, is MSPs helping with cyber insurance questionnaires. If we don't put anything in our agreements with our customers that we help with that, we're not covered by our insurance, our E&O in our business. So again, I'm reserving the right? I'm not an attorney. I know enough to be dangerous. I will say that please, whatever you guys do, if you're adding a service, speak to a qualified attorney to make sure you're covered, that what you're doing is going to be covered by your errors and omissions and your, the things that would cover you, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And Andrew, I mean, you brought up the slide, I'm familiar with this case, the law firm that's suing their MSP over the lost data and productivity and all that from their breach.
Yep.
This is why it's so important, I believe, to do the coverage extension notification with the opt-out, because you now have a record of it. So many times, as a former MSP, I know this because I fell victim to it myself. I would go in, I would do a review, a business review with a partner or customer, and say, look, these are the things that we think you should be doing to better, secure your environment. Security back in the day wasn't as big a deal, but these are the things you should be doing to better your environment. It was in the context of the verbal word, and nothing was ever written down. So then inevitably what happens is their 4-year-old server back then craps the bed, and they come back and say, how come you didn't replace this for us? The answer was 3 months ago, we came in and we told you to do it. You told us no. But we didn't have a cover your ass statement or proof that, in fact, that we had told them that you should do it and they're the ones that denied it. In this day and age, it's really important to have that documentation trail. And in the coverage extension notification that we give you, it doesn't say that you're going to eliminate the threat. It says you're going to mitigate their threat or the risk. So it's really, I think that for all those reasons, it's the right way to go.
And Jim, so the reason I wanted to put this up, I'm glad you brought that up. So this is leading to Michelle's stuff, because she's going to mention, oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank on
Beltex.
Thank you. That piece, in her thing, but it also is going to inform, I'll bring it back up for Chip's conversation. But what's really important here regarding this case, and again, we don't know the details, but more than likely this comes back to making sure that your customers have cyber insurance. Again, we're not sitting there. We don't want to sit there and say you need X amount, because then again, if they're compromised and they don't have enough and you recommended some, but adequate, right? That's number one, because you can infer that the reason the law firm is suing the MSP is if there's not negligence. Let's just say there's not negligence, right? And we want to make sure that this verbiage is also in our contracts, that there are basically unforeseeable things we can't prevent, but we will do everything we can, right? More than likely, this law firm did not have proper cyber insurance, because if they did, they wouldn't be suing the MSP.
Exactly.
Typically, when you sue an MSP and they're suing a Cronus is also named in the lawsuit, it's because they didn't have proper insurance. Again, I'm not saying there wasn't negligence, right? I don't know. We won't know the details of this case probably for some time or ever. But betting the bank, more than likely, it's lack of, they didn't have proper insurance coverage. So anyway, Jim, I'll get off that soapbox and turn it to Michelle for some updates. Do you have something, or do you want me to hold up my slide and Michelle for the things you have to cover?
Oh, no, it's okay. It's fine. I think we talked about most of them, so I'll just share with you with regards to the insurance stuff. We have the Beltex webinar on Tuesday, the 26th. There's the link. And that's at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. For those of you in other time zones, we didn't switch it to daylight savings time. So that is gonna be Chip and Reed Wellick from Fifth Wall Solutions talking about a new program called Beltex. And it's gonna be really good for partners because they can help their clients get insurance more easily. So it should be really good.
Good. And did you have office hours, Michelle?
We do have office hours, yes, also on Tuesday. That'll be at, gosh, I'm gonna have emails for me. At 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So Ben and Anthony will be on those. And then the other thing was just the one pager that Jim had mentioned. I did put that PDF right into the chat as a file. So if you didn't see it and you want to scroll up, you can grab that. That just talks about the SaaS security trends mentioned in the SaaS report, but in a way that you guys can customize and show to prospects and clients. So feel free to use that, put your logo on it, sell some services.
Good. Any questions on that good stuff Michelle brought? All right. So Chip, this kind of leads into, I thought this was, I'll go into full screen mode, but this kind of is, you're getting, questions. I'll set the stage here a little bit for you, Chip, but turn back the time 3-4 years ago, partners were very adamant about what you did and did not do when it came to monitoring email. And that's kind of changed. Why don't you talk to us a little about what's changed, what talk to us about what used to be and what's changed, and then I'll flip slides and we'll kind of talk through, this is, and by the way, what Chip's going to lead us into, we're really asking for your feedback. This is a ideally highly interactive session because it's going to inform what SaaS Alerts does or does not do when it comes to this subject. All right, Chip, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, and you can probably kill the slide. I'd actually love to be able to see everybody. Well,
Okay.
You can leave that one up, but when we get into it.
Yeah, I'll bring this back, but go ahead first and I'll bring that up.
So maybe for the first time ever, I really want to use this call, the balance of this call, for you guys to participate as kind of our product committee. When we first started SaaS Alerts, we were planning to build in some email monitoring capabilities into the product, particularly around file sharing and tracking emails that were leaving the organization in that way. And we got a lot of pushback from our early partners on that and haven't followed through with it. But in more and more of our prospect calls and even some of our partner calls, we're starting to get asked, particularly 365, will you guys start monitoring and creating events around email activity of individual users? So I'd like to get a sense from this crew, who's certainly, I think, our most experienced subset of partners, what your thoughts are on that, how far we should go. The one place that I kind of refuse to go because we don't want the liability of going there is we're not going to read or store any of the data that are contained in business email. In other words, we're not going to ingest the contents that someone has written in an email. We're going to leave that completely off the table. But the rest of this stuff, we're capable of building a user behavior or account behavior pattern on email activity, everything from ingoing and outgoing, and when they're using their email, whether it's coming from a local device client or whether it's being used when OWA, what attachments are being sent, what the subject line is, who the recipient list is. All of that stuff are things that we can do. And I'm wondering from this group, which camp do you fall into? This is too intrusive. My clients would hate it. If you do it, you have to make it an option, maybe even an option down to individual accounts, not just tenants. Or no, I love this idea. I want this across everyone. And last but not least, is there a willingness in the marketplace among your customers and among you guys as our partners to actually pay extra for this as a module? Because it is very expensive to do in terms of if we were to turn it on for everyone, it would triple the data collection size that we have today. So with that, out there as sort of a preamble of the discussion, I'd love to hear from anyone who is willing to chime in and provide their input. Don't all rush at once.
I think it would be hard to justify the cost. Like if it was for free, sure, everyone would want it, right? As maybe just an extra piece to look at. Like when you first kind of brought it up, I thought of, well, this is like another piece where we can grab information from. Maybe we don't want alerts necessarily going off of this, but maybe if we see something a little suspicious, we can then start going into these type of logs to gather further information. But I think that would be an edge case, at least for our scenario. So again, justifying the cost to the customer for that just in case, I think would be tricky.
Thanks, Gabriel. Anyone else in either camp?
And Chip, what's interesting, I was talking to John Strand about email content, and if you start, looking at, my understanding is if you start, pulling in that information around and see like HIPAA information, then SaaS alerts in effect has to fall under HIPAA regulations and everything. So smart idea not to go down that path.
Yeah, absolutely. So Rich is asking if this is similar to DLP. Yeah, Rich, we think of this as certainly adjacent to DLP in the sense that if your customers have visibility into what their employees are doing, team members are doing, with respect to sharing data files, any kind of file outside of the organization, that certainly is adjacent to data loss prevention.
Well, then maybe like some of the other alerts, putting stuff aside for forensic capture for issues that follow afterwards, maybe. But I guess that's too much of a burden to capture all that data without actually kind of effective immediate use of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if we were to do something like this, these events would be by default low-level events, unless you guys set. We'd probably include some kind of an activity standard on it. So, for instance, it's useful to know if a mailbox that typically only sends out 30 emails a day, all of a sudden sends 3,000, right? That would be important to know. Google Workspace customers actually already get that directly from Google, but it's not something that we pick up directly from Microsoft. That would be a correlated event.
I was going to chime in. I think it sounds a little intrusive, but maybe some of these cases, like you just mentioned, Chuck, around the like an extreme number of messages suddenly being sent, or sending a lot of mail to a person who's never received mail before, something like that. I think there's certain elements of it. We use other email, like inbound, outbound security tools and archiving, so which fulfills a different function, but maybe like a security flag on a mailbox, like the one you just mentioned, like, well, that's interesting. But not to look at everything, I guess.
Okay. It's good. This is good feedback. This is exactly what we need.
Are you surprised, Chip, based on the requests you've gotten now, but based on, what partners are asking for versus
Yeah,
what
well,
you're-
as I said at the outset, this has always been as kind of a split topic. And I think what we're mostly hearing here is that this isn't a role for SaaS alerts to play. Definitely not a willingness to pay more for it. And if someone wants these tools for their organization, there are other ways that they can go about getting them. And we're certainly aware of that. There are other solutions out there that provide the kind of monitoring that we're talking about. So, this is helpful. I wish everybody would sort of vote on this, even if you just give a thumbs down or a thumbs up in chat, and we can tally them up. But I think my summary is that I'm coming away with is that we really should not pursue this as part of the SaaS alerts product.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and Chad, you make a great point. I think and I think what Chip's saying is, hey, you don't want it, we're not going to add it. At the same time, with the average MSP now around 40 tools, there's immense risk in tool management in and of itself. So, as our industry will have to consolidate tools for risk on and into of itself. Fair, Chip?
Well, certainly from the standpoint of when I used to be an MSP, I wanted to have the smallest tool set I could get away with. But you do lose functionality if you don't use the right tool for the right thing. Like, there's no product out there that does everything well. There's lots of edge cases and some products that you think you're going to use and you think it's got the functionality you need and it doesn't quite get you there.
Yeah, look, I agree. The irony is, essential cyber hygiene is defined by, CIS. You don't need many tools either. Just, you know what I'm saying? So it's a double-edged sword.
Yep.
And if you look at the top attacks, they're, not tool related. Typically, they're, so.
I have a question. Yeah, I have a question. Are you is this data that you would have to go and pull from other places, or does it come riding along with the data you're already collecting?
We would need to pull it from another set of API endpoints, but it is available. I mean, we've examined whether or not we can do this. The data is there, but we're not collecting it today. No.
Now, if you were to build such a like an intuitive engine, would it sort of do its own sort of study of the data and then trending, and then make an alert based on something that's out of trend, or would it require the user to kind of dictate, I'm interested in this and this and this and this? Tell me about it when it happens.
So the way we would approach this, in order to do this, we have to examine the entire mailbox, right, on a frequent basis. Let's say every 15 minutes, we would pull any mailbox that we were tracking here. The focus that we would have would only be on emails that had attachments, not trying to look at all the communications going in and out of an organization, which is why this is adjacent to DLP. We would then grab the subject, the recipients, the sender, and the file names, and put those into an event, a low-level event. In that way, it could be useful in a respond rule scenario where if you as the MSP wanted to say, okay, if I see too many of these from anyone in the tenant environment, you may want to set that as an alertable event. and take action on it. Maybe the action that you take on it is a do nothing action from Respond, but you guys get an alert on it and you call your customer and make them aware of it. We could build reporting data out of it, right? It would be very easy then to take that information and include in the summary reports from the reports module. You could send to your customer a report that stated, okay, here's all the email attachments that went out and who sent them and to whom. So that's the kind of approach I think we'd be taking, Rich.
All right, good, thanks.
Okay. I think we bottomed it out, Andrew.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Interesting. Good. All right, Jim, are you still with us?
Here.
All right. So, Jim, we started to talk about this at the end of I think towards the end of the year, but like what subjects do uh, do the folks here want to hear more about, right? We can kind of classify them into sales, onboarding, ops, security, core security and things like, but love to hear what people think and what they feel they need more of and what we could deliver. And again, don't all come at us at once. Well, while you guys are thinking and contemplating, interestingly, Jim, some notes I can share from Right a Boom was that the most heavily the highest rated session was actually Carl Bickmore, who's a SaaS Alerts partner, and his session on secure onboarding was the highest rated, and interestingly delivered by an MSP, and shared documentation and all sorts of things like that. So really interesting looking at the data now as it comes in from attendees. All right, Eric, would the focus be to catch insider threats? Chip, would the focus be to catch insider threats or data exfil for external threat actors?
You mean if we're talking about back to the email piece? Absolutely, that's the purpose.
Yeah. Synchro wouldn't even publish a roadmap until the CEO changed. Oh, interesting, Chad. Yeah, I think this approach is awesome, by the way. Jim, you're going to say something?
Well, I would say that if it wasn't for the feedback from this group and the rest of our partners, Synchro probably wouldn't have made it, into our even, on the roadmap for us or on a radar to incorporate for sure.
Oh, speaking of that, Jim, what's going on these days with the gosh, I'm drawing a blank on the name. The
Screen Connect, I think, is what you're thinking of, Andrew.
Oh, actually, no, the APIs that you're writing. Sorry, the latest module. Why can't I think of it? Your latest module.
Oh, App Wizard?
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
What's the latest there, Jim?
So let's see. We've got Okta Duo, AWS Cloud Trail.
Does that surprise you? AWS?
That surprised me, but it bubbled up to the top of the list right after Okta and Duo.
Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. We also have one of our biggest MSSP partners that has a bunch of customers on it, so they wanted it.
Okay.
But that being said, the people have spoken, and we've got 550 folks that signed the 550 MSPs,
Right.
representing 5,000 plus small businesses that say they want SaaS, they want security log data available in APS. And one of the ones, at the top of the list is QuickBooks Online.
Yeah, sure. Good.
So thank you for everyone that, by the way, that was able to answer, or excuse me, not answer, but sign that petition for us. We're now we're going to be pushing that in front of a number of folks that can help influence better logging and APIs, so we can get more applications up. Also, if you haven't filled out our customer survey yet, our partner survey, please do so. This is really valuable information for us. It guides a lot of what we do for the rest of the year. So that would be really helpful. Your account managers, if they haven't reached out to you, will be reaching out to you.
And where are you guys going to be next, Jim, in terms of shows that folks might be able to run into?
Chip and Ben and AJ will be in Dallas next week at Enable.
Okay.
And then Michelle, myself, and some other folks will be at Robin Robbins the first week in April. And then the second week in April, I will be in Canada for the microwave event. Pat and I will be at that one. And I lose track of everything after that, but there's a lot.
Yeah, I think
We'll definitely be. I know we have a lot of Roost partners. Like there's people use us and Roost, and we'll be at Flow.
Yep.
In Tampa in June, and hopefully at that point we'll be unveiling the ability to monitor Roost as well.
That's awesome. And Ben, that's A, not yay. Just so you know, you're going. All right, Jim. Well, should we give 4 minutes back to folks today?
Yeah, I think that's always welcome. A little time back.
All right, fantastic. Well, we'll be back here next Thursday, and appreciate another great call and really cool insights on the SaaS alerts, SaaS report.
Awesome.
I won't be here next Thursday, Andrew, just so you know. I'll be traveling.
Okay. Have safe travels, Chip. Enjoy. And
I will.
All right. We'll see everybody here in a week.
Okay. See
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.